Good evening and welcome. It's Tuesday night. This is the second of our consultation events this evening. We've just about an hour ago had a consultation event, a kind of a town hall meeting with the local community, but this one is specifically tailored at parents of Year 6 children who are interested in a place for this September, and also we did say for Year 5 parents, because obviously your applications for Year 7 in September 2022, they're going to come around quite quickly after those summer holidays. So welcome. You might hear the pitter patter of the rain. It's pouring down here in Doncaster, so apologies if that messes with the sound a little bit. Just to say a little bit about the purpose of tonight. I'm Martin Said. I am a founding teacher at XP. I've been down here in Doncaster for the last 7 years, but I am a Gateshead lad. Those of you who've seen some of the other events that we'll put on know that I'll be part of the team in Gateshead in terms of the teaching team, but I'll still be working across the trust on teacher development. My role is kind of instructional lead. Tonight really is we're here to update you on our progress towards opening. Lots of you have sent in questions on that form for the consultation event, so thank you very much for those. I'll try and address those directly. For those of you who haven't filled in our consultation documents, I'll direct you to those as well, because the more of you who can lend your support to us, the more it's just going to make it even more likely that we get that final funding agreement signed. So on that note, in terms of the overall status, we've got this family consultation event now, and coming up, we've got the end of the consultation on Thursday. Following that consultation, we'll write a report to the Secretary of State for Education saying what the level of support was in the community for this school, for the project. We're in the pre-opening stage now, which means our application has been approved. That's obviously a brilliant sign. There are only something like 20 schools approved in this wave across the whole country. The final step really in terms of getting that signed, sealed, delivered, open for September 2021 is what's called the funding agreement. So the Secretary of State will sign a piece of paper which says, yes, I agree to funding XP Gateshead moving forwards year on year. And so this consultation is really, really important that we get as much positive feedback as possible, and if you have any questions, for us to be able to address those as well. I have to say, so far on the consultation, the responses have been overwhelmingly positive. 100% yes, do you support the school and its ethos? 100% yes, do you support the admissions policy being open, non-selective, not selecting based on gender or prior ability or anything like that? There have been a couple of queries about the use of the site, and I will talk about that later, but of the 100 and odd responses that we had so far, we've had a couple of maybes and one that said no, they'd prefer it to be closer to where they live. But overwhelmingly the responses have been positive. So to everybody who has filled in that documentation, thank you so much, because it really does make a difference when we send that off to the Secretary of State, ready for that funding agreement to be signed. So we're really confident. We've got a bid that's already been approved. It's now just dotting the I's and crossing the T's to make sure that we get that funding agreement signed. So for those of you who haven't attended some other events, I direct you to our website. There are videos on there previously where we've gone in depth with lots of clips from our schools in Doncaster. But just one of the questions that was asked by Joanne was, how is your school different from any other secondary schools? And my first answer that would be, in many ways we're not. We are a mainstream secondary school. So it's important that we state that our students will study the same types of GCSEs as other students do it. They just do it within this envelope of what we call our 3D approach. So we have a curriculum which focuses on students producing beautiful work beyond which they ever dreamed possible, which makes a difference in their community. And through doing that, we believe that students will grow their character. They'll become better people as a result of seeing that they are important because their work is important, because it makes a difference to people in their community. And then the last part of that is, as a result of that, students will see academic success, because through seeing that they're important and their work is important, they're going to work hard, they're going to get smart, and really importantly, they're going to be really kind as well and be the best versions of themselves. So if you were to come into a lesson, Joanne, halfway through the day at XP, it would look very much like lessons in other schools, but there'd be a purpose. Students will be able to tell you what's the guiding question which it is that we're trying to answer at the moment. What's the final product for this going to be that's going to make a difference to our community? Who are we presenting that work to? Where will it live? Is it going to live in the hospital? Is it going to live in the airport? And what difference will it make to members of our community? I've said this before, but when I look back at some of my students in my crew when we first started XP, when you see a young man listening to, at Age UK, an elderly person with dementia tell them about their lives and what they can remember from their long-term memory, and then they listen to that and then they write it down and they go away, and they come back 3 weeks later with a box that they've crafted in the shape of a Spitfire, because that was the memory, the overriding memory that they kept getting from this elderly person of the aeroplanes going overhead during World War II. And inside there are their favourite sweets, but also importantly is a letter to them thanking them for their time, and a first person narrative telling their story from their perspective, and then their sons or daughters are there with them. And we get a letter back saying, you know, I've never seen my mum like that before. I've never seen her like that for 10, 15 years. You really brought joy to her. That is what changes a kid, and that is what our school is about. So, I'll move on to the next slide, which is about our readiness to open. A few people have asked us about this. You know, have we recruited all of the staff that we need? Do we have a scheme of learning in place? Do we feel that we've got enough time to deliver outstanding education, just like we're doing in Doncaster? Great question, Donna. These are the questions I would be asking as a parent. And Lorna, likewise, how can we be sure that the school's going to be ready to open and run smoothly, considering it's not open yet? So, in answer to that, the staff, yes, we've got our team in place. There are 4 of us teaching. I'll go through the team in a moment as part of the teaching team. And we've appointed a team, a really strong team there, who've got all the bases covered in terms of the different areas of the curriculum. People with expertise across a number of different areas. The model is for each group of 50 students, they'd have 2 learning coaches. So you might call them teaching assistants or learning support assistants. For us, they're learning coaches because often they're crew members as well. But in that first year, we are looking for 3 learning coaches just to add an additional bit of capacity. So there is actually an advert out now at the moment for that last learning coach position. If you know somebody brilliant who's involved in classroom support, primary or secondary, we'd love to hear from them. If they just go to the xptrust.org website and look under the vacancies section, it's on there. However, I will say, and we were asked this earlier by Alexa, I know, have we had lots of interest in the post? Absolutely yes, absolutely yes. So we've got a brilliant team in place. We're looking for 1 more learning coach. We're also going to appoint 1 person for admin in the first year, and we'll also be looking for somebody to be able to do a bit of languages part-time as well. In terms of being ready, our induction programme for staff actually starts in June the 7th. So our staff will be, some of them are already in post at the moment, but our staff will be working on a kind of odyssey, if you like, from June the 7th. They spend a week understanding what it means to be crew. Really, really important for them. If they're going to be crew leaders, they need to get a sense of crew in the first instance. Then they go through what we call an expedition slice, where they experience one of our expeditions firsthand. And then there's an extensive period of time after that, right the way up until July, to get planning that curriculum. Now, in terms of is there a curriculum to view, we do the national curriculum. So the standards that come from the national curriculum, the standards that come from GCSEs, we deliver that. Is it there to view? Yes, but no, because we keep everything a secret from the students. So when they start an expedition, when they're in what we call immersion, they're doing things like building background knowledge. It's a point of social equity too, because some students might not have ever discussed atoms, elements or compounds at home, whereas other people might have loads of books on it at home. So we keep it a secret from the students what they're going to be studying until the start of their expeditions. But if you are interested in the type of things that we do, if you go to our xpschool.org website and click on our expeditions, it's all there for you to see what's happened in our Doncaster schools. So yes, there is a 5-year plan. We'll adapt that for Gateshead. You know, if for instance we've done an expedition which was what does the community of Doncaster owe to the miners, for Gateshead we might change that to what does the community of Gateshead owe to the shipbuilders. But that's something which we'll do year on year, look at the existing curriculum and tweak it for Gateshead. So yes, that is in place. And we have in place also now a wider trust support. So we've got an executive team. You know, Andy Spriggs, who's our Chief Academic Officer, will help us with that curriculum. Neil Butler's our Executive Principal, and he'll make sure that we're doing the right things in terms of performance and academic success. Kelly Butler, she is our Chief Wellbeing Officer, so she'll be looking at making sure that we're looking after our staff, we're looking after each other, and most importantly, looking after our kids. And then we've also got Gwyn Apparry, who's our CEO, and he heads up the trust as a whole. In addition to that, we've already now got an emerging, really strong local governing committee for Gateshead, with experience in SEND, with experience in school leadership, with experience in primary as well, because obviously we want to build on the brilliant work that's done in primary schools in Gateshead. And also our directors of trust level are absolutely out of this world, both in terms of their commitment to what the trust is trying to achieve, but also in terms of their expertise around health and safety, finance, legal, building services management. So we really do have all bases covered. And then finally, I would just say, you know, this is not our first draft at making an XP school. It's not even our third draft because we've got 2 schools in Doncaster. It's our 8th, because this will be the 8th year that we've had any secondary schools opening, and we're learning all the time and iterating what we do and getting better and better. And you know, from a personal perspective as well, I've been involved in the setting up of a school twice now, so we've really got a breadth of experience across the whole of the trust. But really good questions. They were the questions that I would be asking as a parent as well. In terms of our team, I'm delighted to say that Mark Lovett has now been offered the position of principal at XP Gateshead and accepted. So Mark is an experienced head teacher. He knows Gateshead really well. He's been a senior leader in school for a long time, but for 6.5 years he's been a leader and a head teacher in Gateshead. So he knows the local authority well, and he knows our bid really well because he's been involved in writing the application with myself for XP Gateshead. Mark's from a science background originally, but he brings a wealth of experience around teaching and learning especially too as well. We've also got Julie Mosley. She's going to be our SENCO and designated safeguarding lead. But Julie again has extensive experience in pastoral leadership in schools from a deputy position, and also has been involved more recently for the last few years in school improvement around the northeast, working with schools to help them improve their systems, to improve their teaching and learning. Julie's also going to be heading up maths in the first instance. She's what used to be called a maths AST, an advanced skills teachers in maths who can, you know, take other maths professionals and help them to improve their practice. We've also got Emmy Tatters, who's a fantastic addition to the team. Emmy is an English specialist, but she's also got a humanities background as well. So another fantastic addition to the team. And then our learning coaches, we've got Tom. Tom is a sports coach. He coaches youngsters. He's got his own business where he's coaching youngsters in football. He's a semi-pro footballer himself, and he brings that wealth of experience from the world of sports. You know, what's great when we get people in from the world of sports is they've really got nailed down that practice. Practice makes permanent. Practice makes permanent. So Tom's a brilliant addition to the team. And then finally, really excited too that we got Wayne. Wayne comes from an outdoor education background. He also runs his own business too around outdoor education, and that's such an integral part of our curriculum. You know, it's not that students will be doing outdoor education every day, but all students, the expectation will be that they go on that outward bound at the first week of their school. I'll talk more about that later. And also that all students will do the Duke of Edinburgh Bronze Award, and as many as possible go on to do the Silver Award as well. So that, you know, being in touch with nature, being in awe of nature is absolutely at the heart of what we do too. So really excited that we've got Tom and Wayne joining our learning coach team, and then hopefully we'll be making another brilliant addition on Friday when we interview for that last place. So if you're sitting there thinking that could be me, what a team. Would love to have you as part of the team as well. Okay. Finally, then there's me. I'll not say too much on me, but I do come from an arts background. You know, I started off teaching music. I also have studied engineering. For the last kind of 6 or 7 years, I've been doing a lot more in terms of STEAM, in terms of maths and science. But as I say, as a team, we've got all the bases covered. It's a really strong team, and I'm just delighted to announce that, you know, who we've got working with us, and really excited to start working. I will also say that in terms of readiness, some of us have been working on this for a long time, have been in post for a while, so we're well ahead of where we need to be in terms of being ready to open in September. Key to that, obviously, will be the building. So at the moment, the DFE and the local authority are working together to get the site ready. This area here is what we call A block. I'll talk about kind of what we anticipate for next year in a second, but at the moment, architects are looking at this building, looking at our beautiful schools in Doncaster, to look at how they can reconfigure the site so it's suitable for us in the long term. Because obviously this was a school designed for 750 plus students, I believe. For us, we're just going to have 250 students in there when we're full. So we need to make sure that that site can work for us. So the DFE with their architects and their project team are in communication with the local authority about the kind of permanent and long-term use of that site. What I will say in the short term is, this is A block, so that shot that you've just seen was looking from I'm pronouncing this correctly to people who live in the area because I don't want to murder it, but Swords Road. I'm not sure if it's Swords or Swords, but if you're looking in this way, that's A block. This is C block, which is a much older block with the flat roof, and then this is B block up here. We're anticipating now that B block is going to be our temporary accommodation for the next academic year, at least, whilst the DFE and local authority look at the site and work out how we can reconfigure, especially block A, for the permanent use for our students. There is precedence for this too. You know, when we started in Doncaster, originally we were in the east stand of the Keep Moat in 4 classrooms down there. There's actually a lot more space in B block than we had originally in Doncaster. So this is A block. That was the shot that you were looking at originally, the photograph looking in this aspect. This is B block up here, and there is plenty of space there, but again, that is likely to be reconfigured before we go in there. You know, some stud walls going up, some stud walls going down, but we'll make sure it's beautiful and ready and appropriate for your son or daughter if they're starting with us in September. Well, August 31st. More on that in a second. Just to give you an idea of, you know, what we're aiming for, though, you know, we'll be pragmatic in the way that we reconfigure the site. A lot of it is in the hands of the DFE and their project team. But these are our schools in Doncaster, and they're just beautiful buildings. There's lots of open space for celebrating and displaying the beautiful work of students. But like I say, you know, if you look at our classrooms, they're very much like conventional classrooms. Normally the seats wouldn't be like this. This is during COVID, but they're very much like regular classrooms with, again, lots of space for this kind of temporal display of what's our guiding question, what are the case studies that we're looking at. But we're going to work really carefully with the DFE to make sure that that site's appropriate for us, because it has to work in the long term. In terms of admissions, and I know this is what most of you have been waiting for, so I'm delighted to say that I can announce some firm dates now for when we're going to be able to go out with offers. So if you just bear with me a moment, but some questions here from Shana Mohammed asked how many applicants there are, what are the criteria for applications from Deb and Mohammed, and can children in Newcastle apply? So I'll answer this one kind of with a shorter answer, but there is a longer answer. You can apply in Newcastle, yes, but there are oversubscription criteria. And whilst I don't think it's appropriate to say exactly how many applications we've had, I can say we are oversubscribed at the moment based on the people who filled in the form. In Doncaster, typically, there are 11 applications for every place. At the moment, we're not at that level yet, but we are significantly oversubscribed already in Gateshead. So it looks very likely that when we run the admissions protocol, that we're going to need to use these oversubscription criteria. So what we have is the children who are prioritised first are looked after children. So if they are currently in care of the local authority or have previously been in care of the local authority, then they will be prioritised. After that, if there are children of staff, we think that's really important that, you know, if you're working at one of our schools, that as a family you should be able to travel to the same place, but also that you should get that experience of education for your child. And then, if there are siblings of children that are already attending or have attended XP Gateshead. Now that might well apply for some of you if you've got twins, for example, applying this year. If one of the twins was to be successful, automatically their brother or sister would also get in. Then comes the oversubscription criteria. So typically year on year, you know, now that we've been open 7 years in Doncaster, I'd say of the 50 places, around about 10 to 15 typically get filled with siblings, mostly, but sometimes children of staff, sometimes looked after children. And then the other places would go to random allocation. So within our catchment area, and I will give you those postcodes again if you haven't seen them in a second, it's random allocation. So what we will do is put the list of students who fall under this category, who aren't looked after, who aren't children of staff, who aren't siblings, but are within the catchment area, and we will randomly draw, let's say, you know, this time around it might be 46, something like that, 47 names in this category. If you're from Newcastle, you can apply, but you would be next in that criteria. So if we're oversubscribed, I do have to be honest and say it's unlikely that from Newcastle you would get a place in the school. You know, you're welcome to apply. You would do it through, in future years, through Newcastle Local Authority. This year, through our admissions form ourselves. But it's unlikely that you get a place considering that we're oversubscribed. And the reason for that is, you know, we've applied for a school in Gateshead. We've worked closely with the local authority in Gateshead. We want this to be a school for all of Gateshead, but we do have to have a catchment area. So in terms of that catchment area, these are the postcodes from which we'll be taking students. And where it gets a bit granular like this, this is just because sometimes there are some areas which are Gateshead, some areas that aren't. We've also included Springwell Village in our catchment as well, because whilst it's not Gateshead, we can see that it's very, very close in location to the Thomas Hepburn building, that kind of area of High Felling. And we thought it appropriate that if families from there were choosing to send their students, then they're geographically close, so they should be able to too. Our catchment therefore is DH3, and then the prefix in the second half 1. So, you know, if you've got anything like DH3 1AB, that would be fine, as long as it starts with DH31. Then we've got DH32. These postcodes in their entirety. And then finally, NE418J and NE425N. So that is our catchment area. If you're applying from outside of that, you know, for example, from NE4, then you would be next under that oversubscription criteria. And if we fill the whole of the school with people from this catchment area, as I say, it's unlikely that you'd get a place if you're applying from outside of that catchment area. Okay, so we've also been asked, how is the random draw for students carried out? How is it actually done? Jill and Melanie asked this. So this website, random.org, uses an algorithm to generate random numbers. What we would do, let's say, you know, for example, in Doncaster, we've got 750 students on our waiting list. We're not at that level in Gateshead, but we are oversubscribed based on people who've expressed an interest. We would put those 750 students who fall into that category of in the catchment area into a spreadsheet, just in alphabetical order. Then we get random.org to generate a random set of numbers from 1 to 750. So person 1 in that list might end up with the number 37. The next person might end up with the number 722. The next person, number 300. And so what we then do is organise them by that number and contact number 1 first. They will be first on our list of people to ask, do you want to have a place at XP in Doncaster? We'll use exactly the same process in Gateshead, so it will be completely fair, completely random and completely transparent. So we're working with the local authority who will oversee that process this year. We are the admitting authority in the first instance, just for this first year of opening. But next year, you will apply, if you've got children in year 5, through the regular Gateshead admissions process. So in the same way that you normally would in any year, where you'd identify a preference of schools, you'd do it that way. What I would say for next year, if you've got children in year 5, what you mustn't do is only put XP Gateshead as the only school that you want, because that won't make it any more likely or any different in terms of how you'd be chosen randomly. If you put XP Gateshead as the only school, the local authority then would decide, if you weren't successful, what your second preference and what your third preference would be. So if you've got children in year 5 now, in September you'll apply through the regular Gateshead process, but you must choose other schools as your second and third choice if XP Gateshead is your first choice. All right, it's really important that you do that, because only putting XP Gateshead doesn't have any bearing at all. It is genuinely random, you know, essentially a lottery basis. Okay, I've said quite a bit, and this is the really important bit now in terms of admissions timeline. So just on this, if you do have any questions now, if you want to put them in the chat, I'm sure people might already have done that, but in the chat function on the YouTube stream, if you've got any questions, do feel free to put them in there. And we've got a team kind of working behind the scenes. Jeff's here, Mark and Julie are back up at home. They're monitoring that, and I'll do my best to address those questions at the end too. All right, but this is where you might want to get a bit of pen and paper, because this is the drum roll bit. This is where we're going to announce the timeline for admissions for this academic year going into year 6 into year 7. So Lisa, Lorna, Deb have asked, when do we find out if your child's been offered a place? So, for those that have already filled in a form expressing an interest, you don't have to do anything. What we will do is we'll email you and we'll ask if you want to withdraw, but if you don't contact us back, we'll take that as a full admission, and we'll just take your details in terms of your son or daughter's name, your contact details, and then we'll put them into that random allocation. So again, I'll repeat, if you've already filled in that form saying I'm expressing an interest for a place in year 7 in this coming academic year, and your son or daughter is already in year 6, if you've already filled in that form, you don't need to do anything. When you get an email from us, you can ignore it. If you did want to withdraw, then just reply to us and let us know. That's helpful to us, so if you've not got additional names in the pot. But if you've already filled in that form, don't do anything. All right? So this consultation closes on Thursday. So we've got the local elections coming up, so we're going to close the consultation then, just so there's not two kind of public events happening at the same time in Gateshead. We're going to open officially the application form on May the 6th. So if you haven't already filled in an application form, on the evening of Thursday, May the 6th, you'll be able to fill in an application form and your name will be added to that list with everybody else who already has filled in that expression of interest. And again, just emphasise, if you've already filled in the form saying I'm interested in a place, you don't have to do anything. All right? If you want to double check that we've got it, by all means, get in contact with me through the website and I confirm that we've got it. All right? So What we're then going to do is give you 2 weeks, which also gives us time to look at if there's been any feedback that we need to consider. But we're going to give you 2 weeks as a deadline for applications. So May the 20th at midday is when we will close applications for XP Gateshead. So if you haven't filled in the form yet, on Thursday, May the 6th, look for that post on our website, look for the form to fill in, and get it filled in before May the 20th at midday. Anything after that will be taken as a late entry and will be below those oversubscription criteria, whether you're in the catchment or outside of the catchment. So please do make sure, if you're thinking of applying, that's the really important date in terms of getting your application in. What will happen then is behind the scenes, and again this will be overseen by the local authority to ensure fairness, we will then, with random.org, generate that list of the students who have been allocated a place on that oversubscription criterion inside that catchment area. We will then offer places to parents on May 21st. Now, I hope you can imagine we're going to have a lot of parents to contact on that day. So if you don't hear on that date, don't worry. But what we will do, we'll do our best to send out at least an email on the 21st. But if we can, it'll be hot on the phones. It'll be like the old days when you had a telethon on the telly. And we'll do our best to contact all parents on that day. And again, if you miss the call, don't worry. Until you say to us, yes, I confirm that I've been offered a place and I want to have that place, or you say, no, actually we're going to decline the place, then that offer still stands, all right? So if you get a missed call from a Doncaster number or from a number you don't recognise on the Friday and you missed the call, don't worry, we will try and get in contact with you again. But May the 21st is we're going to start making offers to parents. And just to say that, it's really exciting that at last we're going to have our list of 50 students and we can start planning in terms of transition too as well, which I know lots of you have been interested in if your son or daughter does get a place. So I'll just leave that on the screen for a few more seconds if you want to make a note of that. So the application form, the final application form, will go live on Thursday night. If you haven't filled that in, you must get it filled in by May the 20th, and then we'll start contacting families on the 21st. Okay. So in terms of transition, Alexa asked, will there be transitional visits for the students and family? Sean had said what transitional work will be done, and will there be viewing of the school before September? Melanie had asked that. So in terms of the transition, it is difficult for 2 reasons really. One, COVID, restrictions in terms of COVID still aren't due to end until June 21st, and fingers crossed that we still as a nation keep to that timeline. Secondly, also, we've got the fact that we're not likely to be able to get into that building until later in the summer. Work's going to start on there in earnest pretty soon in terms of getting that temporary accommodation ready and then the wider use of the site. So what we will do, this is our plans. Primary schools will share information with us about the children who've been successful in terms of applying, and students, we'll ask them to complete a kind of all about me. So as a XP Gateshead team, we'll get a bit of writing from your son or daughter where they tell us about them, what they're into, how they learn, what they're passionate about, what their pet's called. And then we'll send a Google form to you as parents too, if there's anything else that you want to inform us about right off the bat. We normally would have family meetings. Now these aren't an interview, there's no panel interviews to get accepted to XP Gateshead. It's just a chance for us to meet and make clear what our expectations of you as a family are, what you can expect from us in return, and our expectations of your son or daughter too. At the very least, we'll make sure that those happen online. And so we'd meet with you, your son and your daughter for half an hour, and then at the end we'd ask your son or daughter to leave and then just ask, is there anything else you want to talk to us about as well, about transition or making your son or daughter ready as much as we can for the start of the new term. If we can do that, we will do it in person, but just COVID restrictions and the time that we're working on might mean that some of those at least have to be done online. We're working with the local authority at the moment on a transition day. I have to say, as a whole, all of the secondaries are still grappling with this in terms of exactly what that's going to look like, as you'll know, those of you who are in year 6. So we need to consider that carefully and the impact it would have on primaries. What we want to try and do, as much as possible, is align it to what the other secondary schools are doing. So if we're able to get students out for an in-person event, which would have to be at a site other than the building in Thomas Hepburn, we'll try and do that if at all possible on the same day as the rest of the authority. But certainly we do want to meet with you as a large group in person at some point, certainly in July. And I'll talk more about that in a second. But at the very least, what we did last year in Doncaster as a result of COVID was we had all 50 students together in a kind of virtual open day. But again, that needs considering carefully, because last year children were, for the most part, at home. They're in school at the moment. So there's a bit of work still to be done on that, but we definitely do want to work with your son or daughter, at least for a day, but we just need to get that sorted with the local authority in terms of what's happening with the rest of the secondary schools and how can we best fit into that, because we're taking students from right across the borough. Typically the secondary schools are taking from 4, 5, 6 feeder primaries. We'll also do visits to your son or daughter's primary school to meet them in person, and we'll prioritise those students who need a bit more transition than other people first, just in terms of getting to know friendly faces. But as I say, a building visit is more difficult. We haven't been given a date yet as to when we're going to get the keys, but it's likely going to be close to when we're ready to open. If at all possible, to get you even just to see the site, we'll do that. But again, that just depends largely on the pace at which we're able to work in terms of getting that site ready. And again, I have to say, I really understand the DfE's position that they've been in for the last 2 years. It's been really difficult organising things at a national level. But we were hoping to have find out in terms of readiness for opening. Our bid approval, you remember, was approved in January. We were hoping to find out in June of the previous year. So we're working at a pace here that's really, to the best of my knowledge, it'll be the quickest opening of a school in the history of the Free Schools programme. So we're working hard and fast, and we'll do what we can in terms of transition. In terms of outward bound, that is really important in terms of the students' transition. So that first week of August the 31st it will be, and I'll show you the calendar in a moment. That first week of August the 31st, students will, and again COVID measures mean that we're confident that we'll be able to do this, as long as we keep going in the same direction. But in terms of the outward bound, yes, August the 31st, we'll be going to Ullswater. Doncaster schools go to Aberdyfi, but we'll be going to Ullswater on Tuesday, August the 31st, and returning on Friday, the 3rd of September. And again, in terms of transition and in terms of students understanding what it means to be crew, that's vitally important. So if your son or daughter is successful, that is an expectation that they'd be there for that time from August the 31st. In terms of the outward bound, so I did mention a meeting in July, in-person events we will definitely hold early July, and again we need to see when schools are doing their transition events, so we can't commit to an event yet because we wouldn't want to do, for example, a virtual transition event on the same day as then asking you to pop down to somewhere in Gateshead to meet us. But we will do an in-person event in July for you to meet us, meet the team. Students can kind of meet other students who they're going to be working with, and at that event we'll go through in detail what you need to know for that outward bound for the first week, because by that point you'll know that your son or daughter's got a place, and you'll know that they're going on the outward bound on the August 31st. We've got kit lists which we can give you. We need some medical forms filled in, for example, but there's also then just talking about the purpose of the week, and most importantly, like I say, a chance to get to know each other. So that'll be lovely to finally get to meet in person, and that'll be early July. In terms of the calendar more generally, Gemma had asked, how does it differ to other schools in the rest of the region? It is different in some aspects. We have slightly different holiday patterns because we tend to run 3 expeditions, which tend to work best if they're around about 12 weeks in length. We used to have, previously in Doncaster, kind of 5 8-week terms, and often we double up the expeditions if they were 16 weeks. Now that we've got kind of 3 terms, it means we can make those expeditions equitable in terms of the length. But one of the other reasons that's allowed us to do that is in Doncaster, the local authority down here have committed to having Easter at the same time every year. So we can plan for that, because as you know, Easter can move, they can be a month apart from one year to the next. That allows us to plan for that. And so Doncaster's already gone closer to what we were doing XP, which is the 2-week break in October too. So there are some differences. The reason that we're going with the Doncaster calendar and not being completely aligned with the Gateshead calendar is, in terms of us sharing our expertise with the Trust, that's massively important to us. We do have more teacher days throughout the year as well. So there are often, roughly once a half term, on a Friday and a Monday, students would be asked to stay at home. There's not any work set there for the students. In addition, it's not like a working from home day, but staff do come into school on those, and that's where we work across the Trust at developing our amazing curriculum and working on professional development. So we have, as you can see here, the 2 weeks in October. And this week does align with Gateshead, but this one is slightly different. What that does mean, though, is you can get cheap holidays, which is great, because it's outside of the time when other people are normally booking their holidays. Other than that, for the run-up to Christmas, it's pretty much identical to Gateshead, other than these blue staff days here. So you can see they're paired up halfway through the half term on a Friday and a Monday. That's when we work as a staff, and we'll be collaborating with our colleagues in Doncaster too on making sure that we're planning a brilliant curriculum and making sure that we're learning from each other too. So again, we've got those 2 staff days in January. This February is a little earlier than in Gateshead. So that holiday there in the week commencing the 14th, that is earlier than in Gateshead. And again, the Easter holiday is slightly earlier. So one of these weeks lines up with the holiday with the other schools in Gateshead. We've got, again, the staff days in the middle of each day. And then from May through to July, it lines completely with Gateshead as well. So there are some slight differences. We are conscious, that does have an impact on families, but we've made the decision really that it's most important for us to be able to learn from and work with the schools in the trust in Doncaster, and that's something that we'll continue to do moving forward. So these calendars are linked from our consultation page, and they're also linked from the XP Trust website as well, xptrust.org. And I'll also put these slides on the XP Gateshead website tonight after this meeting, and then you'll be able to kind of go back through these and look at them at your leisure. So thank you for that question. Coming back to the outward bound in this first week, so here we do come back a little earlier. So we come back from the summer holidays because we've got those extra staff days. That means we get kind of 5 weeks in the summer rather than 6 weeks. So this week here in Year 7, students will be going to Ullswater here and coming back on Friday the 3rd of September. Again, I have to say that is an expectation that all students do that. Everybody who's given a place for September August in Year 7, they must go to that outward bound because it's so important in terms of engendering that sense of crew. So we'll go on the morning of Tuesday the 31st and we'll come back on the afternoon of Friday the 3rd. And it's more than just a residential. So Alexa, Sean and Donna asked, will there be a residential? The thing I think that sets us apart most, to go back to that very first question in terms of the differences between us and other secondary schools, is crew. This idea that we have deliberately sized small pastoral groups of 12 or 13 students. They meet with each other for 45 minutes every day. So it's not your conventional 20 minutes, do the notices, take the register and then wish the students well. We invest time in students developing those relationships so they have a school family. If you ask any students in Doncaster, what's your mission? They'll talk about either getting 12 or 13 other students ready for university, if that's what they want to do. Sometimes they might say 49 other students. But if you ask them what is crew, without fail, every one of them will talk about family somewhere. And so this is crucial this first week because they will be put into their crews. They'll find out who their crew's going to be. So you'll get kids going, yes, I've got Jeff. And then they will go, and their first day will be get on a bus, show courage, show determination, and maybe go climb a mountain, maybe sleep in a boat for that first night. Who knows? It's all kept secret, but it is challenging, and it is rigorous, and it is demanding. And that's when students are going to form those relationships, because they're going to be saying to each other, I can't, and then they're going to say, yes, you can. Really, really important. So it is more than just a residential. It's about what it means to be crew. And that fundamentally is the building block and the starting point for that crew pastoral system. Having one trusted adult and a familial, trusted group of students who've got each other's back. So as I say, we'll have that event in July with more information on that. But keep an eye on our website, and we will be in direct contact with successful families anyway as a result of the admissions process. So we'll start a dialogue going there as well. Do we have SND support from Fiona? Yes, like any other school. The model is one learning coach for each class. We're appointing that additional one this year, as I've said in the first year, just so we've got a bit of an additional capacity there. But we've got a SENCO, that's Julie. I will restate what we're not. We're not an SEND specialist school, so there are some misconceptions about that. That because we're small, we must have really good resources for high sensory rooms, we just don't have that. There'll be 8 members of staff and that building in the first year. However, I will also say that we've had remarkable success with SEND students. So we do support SEND students well, but we are not a specialist provision. We're a mainstream school, and we've got success with SEND students to date. But in the same way as any other school, there's SEND support in the classroom. And then from Karen, we had opportunities for extracurricular. So yes, we'll be linking up with the music service. We'll, a lot of their work operates out of the Sage. So yes, there'll be opportunities for music tuition, but also, we're already starting to form partnerships with places like Seven Stories, the Baltic, because a lot of what is deemed extracurricular in other schools is actually just part and parcel of our curriculum. Students are working alongside experts. It's our expectation that they all study arts as they move up through the school. So it's not just extracurriculum, but yes, we will be looking to have clubs after school, and that's partly why we've got that really rich team in the first instance to be able to provide that for the students. Really importantly though, in terms of being part of our curriculum, we talk all of the time about equity of opportunity. How many of our students in each year group have been to see a theatre production? Because some students won't have experienced that in their life yet. How many have seen a Shakespeare play being produced? How many have been on the campus of a university? Well, we'll make sure that they all do that. And so there is space in the curriculum where students can attend to their passions. We call it common mission, but there are spaces where they can, in time, get additional qualifications in other GCSEs if they want to, but initially that'll be rooted in their passions. And as I've already said, Duke of Edinburgh Bronze, as the students move into year 9, that's an expectation of all students too. So, in terms of what next, if you are looking for more information, if you go to XP Gateshead, about us, and then there's a frequently asked questions section. There's a space there where you can leave comments. I'm sure there'll have been questions coming through on the YouTube as well. And if you haven't already done so, if you're a technical whiz, you can get your phone out right now and scan this picture, and it'll take you to our consultation page. If not, just kind of go to XP Gateshead, look for this button. If you're on a laptop, it'll appear kind of over here on your screen. If you're on a phone, just scroll down until you see that button. Fill in that form for us, please, that's on there, because the more people who fill that in, and the more people who say, yes, we're in support of XP Gateshead, or raise important questions for us, which we can then say to the Secretary of State, yes, we've considered this, then it just makes it even more nailed on that we're going to get that funding agreement signed and be ready to open in August 31st. But we're super confident that's going to happen anyway. We're really appreciative of everybody who's filled in that form so far. So I just want to say, from my heart, thank you so much for your support. It does mean a lot. And I know some of the names who've asked questions there have been with us from the very beginning, at the very first event we did. So honestly, thank you so much, because we wouldn't have been able to do this without the support of the community. So there's our frequently asked questions section. If you're on our website, just click on About Us. You'll see many of your questions probably have been answered there. If you do have any further questions after tonight, then please do pop them on there. And again, we'll curate those and make them an answer that everybody can see. So that's it from my presentation. I'll ask Jeff in a moment, and I'm going to kind of scan through this document too. But I'll just ask if there are any additional questions, Jeff, from the doc.
We can jump into that straight away if you like.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jeff.
So let's go through. So first of all, a question from Julie, which you've kind of answered, but I wonder if you could build on it. Will you have staff from the Doncaster School supporting you?
Absolutely, yes. So I've been here for 7 years. In terms of expeditionary learning, which is the name for what we do, and we're heavily indebted to the schools in America that we learned from in the first instance. I've been part of that team from the beginning. I'd like to think that there aren't many people better placed in the country to have an understanding of the mechanisms of that and how it works. But in addition to that, we've got Mark as principal. He's been working with the Trust for over a year now in terms of getting his head under the bonnet so that he could understand and write the bid for XP Gateshead, and also be successful as an applicant for the principal position. But likewise, we've got a trust structure there now, which just wasn't there in the first place because of our size when we first opened in Doncaster. So during those staff days and as an ongoing basis, yes, we'll absolutely get support and importantly challenge from our schools in Doncaster as well.
Great. So something from Mark to say, yes, you did actually pronounce the name of the street right, which is great.
First time or second time?
Good point, actually. Mark, if you're still with us, if you could tell us which of the two pronunciations it is, that'd be great. Another question from Julie. Will you still Go in the random draw if you put your school as second or third choice. I'm a year 5 parent, is a caveat to that one.
Great question. Yes, you will.
Okay. A question from Alexa. If you send an email to see if someone still wants a place and they don't reply and are then offered a place, how long will you give them to respond before offering it to somebody else?
I'd go and knock on the door, Alexa. You know, we're at a scale we're able to do that. So if I'm knocking on the door and not getting an answer, then that's the point at which we might have to say, look, we're going to have to pass this on to somebody else and write them a letter. But I don't anticipate that happening. It's not happened in any of the years that we've been open in Doncaster. But you know, we are determined to make sure that those people who are applying know that they've been offered a place, and we want it to be as fair as possible. But yeah, you know, there has to be a cut-off point, but we just haven't experienced that so far.
So next we have a question from Sean and another one from Alexa which kind of ties in with this. I think you'll probably be able to answer this in one. First of all, how will you help children who might be anxious about going on Outward Bound, and will children be able to take their phones on the Outward Bound with them?
Great. So 2 really good questions. Firstly, that anxiety about going on Outward Bound is actually, you know, it's not uncommon. So that's where I would start with most students. More because it's a really big thing. It's a really big thing. It's a new school. It's a secondary school. You don't know many of the students that you're going to be there with. And therein lies the beauty of what we do, because by the end of the week, every single student's got a shared narrative of being able to say, I did it. So that event in July will be really, really important. Whilst we won't be able to reveal at that point who crew leaders are going to be, there's an opportunity to get to know all of our faces, and we're all very friendly, even Mark. We're all really friendly, and we'll get to know each other really, really well over the years. But that's an opportunity just to go, you know, if they're feeling anxious on the bus and, you know, they spent 20 minutes with me on that, then I can do. I mean, you know, one of the girls in my crew, young lady, she won't mind me telling this story. She was like an octopus trying to get her onto the bus. She had her hands all over the door. We got her on. She started talking to another child on the bus, and within 20 minutes I was able to phone her mum and say she's fine. She's absolutely fine. The most important part of, you know, children who are feeling anxious is on that morning of the 31st, they're going to be circling up in their crews before they get on the bus, and that's where they'll get most support. But I take the point, they need some reassurance before they go. So we'll be able to provide some details of the types of things they'll be doing in July. We'll also be able to put them at ease in terms of, you know, what they're not going to be asked to do. We'll be able to share stories from students who've previously gone. At the very least, I'll be able to show you video clips of some of our kids talking about, because that's really important. Some of our students from Doncaster going, I know you're worried, but it's going to be absolutely fine. It would be great if we get some of our students up there, but again, all of that will depend on COVID. But absolutely, that July will be there to put people's minds at ease, and just so they can picture what it is that they're going to be doing. We'll be able to show them pictures of the site, etc., where they're going to be going to. But most support, to be fair, will come from their crews, and that's why we do it. That anxiety, that need to show courage, that need to have somebody else say to you, yes, you can, that's why we do it.
Excellent. So,
and phones, sorry.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yes, they take their phones. They're given time to contact home each, and again, this is reassurance for them as well. The phones get locked up, and then they're given kind of half an hour each night to make phone calls home. In Abu Dhabi, the signal's not brilliant, but I'm reassured that the signal in Ullswater is much better. If it ever came to the point, you know, where they couldn't make contact with you, again, we've gone on the landline in the office in the Outward Bound building and made sure that parents can get in touch with the children. So yes, they'll be able to contact home once per day, but the rest of the time, again, so they get that sense of this is an adventure. For the rest of the day, they're not able to use their phones.
An appreciation from Gillian to say, I can say from experience that Wayne is an excellent tutor. He was my lecturer for sports therapy at Newcastle College many years ago.
There you go, we only get the best.
Absolutely. Question from Mark, will there be a uniform?
Well, so there's a dress code. There's a misconception that there's not a uniform. There is. So we ask students, we try and keep things really simple. You know, we've only got 3 school rules. Work hard, get smart, be kind. If you're doing those 3 things, then you're doing everything right. Our dress code is really simple. We expect children to dress appropriately and modestly, which means when they're out on field work, they need wellies. You know, that's part of the uniform. It's appropriate to wear wear wellies on field work if it's February and we're doing sampling in a field somewhere. That's appropriate. Modest means that, you know, if there's excessive rips in jeans and things like that, and we'd have to talk to students about that. There is going to be, and again, as soon as we get that funding agreement signed, then we'll be able to, you know, invest the money into being the company to do it. But you might have seen on some of the videos that the students have polo shirts with the XP branding on. We'll encourage that. We'll encourage that. Partly so students feel a bit of badge pride. They've got a bit of identity, and it just makes it really easy for you as well as parents to go, yeah, just put your polo shirt on. You know, today is a day where this is a bit more of a formal event, so I'm in jumper and a shirt. But a lot of days I would just be in jeans, polo shirt. So the expectation is the same for staff as it is for students. Dress appropriately and modestly, but there will be polo shirts, hoodies, which students can buy with the branded logo, has crew on the back, which is quite nice as well. And there's also a PE kit, again, which is branded up as well, which is not compulsory, because we know not everybody might want to do that, but we will encourage it.
Excellent. Mark has also said that it was the first pronunciation that we got it right.
Got it.
Alexa has asked, are children required to have an iPad?
So it helps, yes, if they have a device. Now, we have a scheme that we'll be putting live as soon as the admissions have been sorted, and we've got that kind of go that we can do it in terms of the funding agreement. But we've got a scheme where you can buy an iPad at a discounted price and pay for it over time. It definitely helps if students have a device. Lots of students use Chromebooks, that's perfectly fine. Lots of students have more expensive things like MacBooks or laptops. That's fine too. Again, I'd just caution parents about, you know, if you're anything like me when I was 11 years old, I would have not had my hands anywhere near any of those devices because I was clumsy as. But yeah, an iPad really would be the minimum that we'd need for students in terms of having a device, just because, you know, so much of what we do is through technology in terms of Google Docs, collaborating on those, drafting, redrafting. If getting a device is going to be an issue for you in terms of funding, talk to us about it and we'll arrange something. All right, so it is an expectation that students have a device. Phones, we ask them to be away during the day because you've got all sorts on there in terms of apps that can be a distraction. So we need an appropriate device like a tablet or a laptop that students can use for creating work. And we do have a scheme that you can buy those through, which again we'll put on the website as soon as we can.
Final question this evening is from Alexa, and it is, do the two sets of 25 kids get to mix together for lessons, breaks, etc.?
So, great question. So the way there are a few different structures in terms of the way that we work with those 50 students. There are the crews of 12 or 13 that will meet for 45 minutes every day. In Doncaster, in the school that I worked in initially, we had two classes of 25. Down here they're called Skipper and Admiral, because it's partly the link to being, you know, crew on a boat, but also the types of butterflies as well, which is, you know, it's our symbol and it's about metamorphosis and becoming the best version of yourself. So if I've got a crew of 12 or 13 students, half of them are going to be in Skipper, half of them are going to be in Admiral. So they mix with each other in their crews. At breaks and lunches, they're mixing with each other anyway. You know, they're either kicking a footy about, or they're doing some artwork, or they're just chatting in the playground. There's also, at least once a week, there's also a community meeting, and these are the most beautiful things that you can ever imagine, of all 50 students sitting together as a community and giving each other appreciations for the beautiful things they've done for each other, for apologising, because students make mistakes, and making a pledge that goes with that of, you know, this is what I'm going to do better. And also, really, you know, really importantly, students will make stands for our character traits. They'll say, I want to make a stand for courage, because, you know, I've noticed, or I want to make a stand for integrity because last week Jeff made a pledge and he hasn't been following it. And then it's like, oh, what are we going to do about that? How can we help you out, Jeff? Because things aren't going well at the minute. And they're beautiful things because it is a community driving the community and supporting each other to be the best versions of themselves. So as a community, we'll meet at least once a week formally in those community meetings. But yeah, they're mixing during the day, at break and at lunchtime, and students from both classes of 25 would be mixed in those crews. As they move further up the school, there's also that time common mission which I've talked about, where during that time some students might form smaller groups and say, we want to do a psychology GCSE, and we'll then get them an expert who'll work with them as a mentor, and you might have smaller groups there. But typically it's those kind of three structures during the week: the crews of 12 or 13 students, the two classes of 25, and then the community meetings as a whole 50. That's all. Okay, so again, I can't state enough how appreciative we are of all of you for the support that you've given us. And I know, you know, there are names there, like I say on those slides, who've been here from the very, very beginning. So thank you so much. It really does mean a lot to us. If I can just go back to this again and say, if you haven't filled in this yet, there's some information there about the school. There are links to the calendar. There are links to our admissions policy, which is in draft form at the moment. As soon as consultation's finished, we'll make that go live. And you can let us know your views. If you do have any questions after tonight, you go, oh, I wish I'd asked that question. As I say, just go to our frequently asked questions section. And when you scan down to the page at the bottom, there's a place where it says, have you got any more questions? Hit the leave a comment function. But again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your support. Thanks to Jeff. Thanks to Julie and Mark, who've been sitting behind the scenes, not doing very much, to be frank. But that's only because I forgot to get them on the call at the end, so I'll apologise to them. But thank you. Have a lovely evening, and make sure you get that form filled in by May the 20th, and we'll be in contact with you on May the 21st. Best of luck with it all. Thank you.